Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the microscopic world to uncover a really startling connection, the secret link between some very common viral infections and, believe it or not, the development of cancer.
So let's just start with a question that honestly sounds like it's straight out of science fiction, but it is absolutely rooted in fact. What if a virus, one you might have caught years ago and barely even noticed, was quietly, secretly rewriting the rules inside your cells, setting the stage for something much more serious down the road?
Well, this isn't some rare fringe idea. It's a huge factor in global health. The data is pretty clear. A staggering 10 to 20% of all human cancers are directly caused by viruses. Just think about that for a second. That number highlights this invisible battle that's happening inside our bodies all the time. It means a huge chunk of cancer diagnoses has a viral trigger, a silent, persistent threat that can just hang out for decades without us ever knowing. Okay, so to really get how a virus can do this, we first have to appreciate the absolutely sophisticated systems our cells have to stay healthy. Your body has this incredibly elegant way of managing cell growth, kind of like a finely tuned orchestra of genes all working together in perfect harmony. So think of your cell's control system like a car. It's got accelerators. These are called proto-oncogenes, and they're essential. They tell your cells when to grow and divide, which you need for things like healing a cut. And just as important, it has brakes. These are your tumor suppressor genes, and they're crucial for stopping any abnormal or runaway growth. Right, so you've got the accelerator and the brakes. But the system is even smarter than that. To round out this cellular orchestra, you've also got DNA repair genes. Think of them as the genetic maintenance crew, fixing typos in your DNA. And then there are apoptosis genes, which are basically the self-destruct button for any cell that's too damaged to be fixed. When all four work together, it's beautiful. But if a virus messes with just one of them, it can send a perfectly normal cell down a very dangerous path. So now let's look at the viral strategy. These cancer-causing viruses, they don't just attack, they're playing a long game. This isn't a quick hit and run. It's a meticulously planned subversion that can play out over years, even decades. So for a virus to actually cause cancer, a whole series of things have to go right for the virus and wrong for us. First, it has to set up shop for the long haul, a persistent infection. Second, it has to learn how to hide from our immune system. From there, it can take advantage of that weakened state, find just the right kind of cell to infect. And then, the final move, it inserts its own genetic code into ours, becoming a permanent and potentially very dangerous part of that cell. Some of these viruses are masters of stealth. Take Epstein-Barr virus. It essentially whispers instead of shouts. It restricts its own gene expression, so it just blends into the background, becoming almost invisible to the immune cells that are supposed to hunt it down. Others, like HPV, are smart about real estate. They pick their location carefully. They set up hideouts in places like the outer layers of our skin, where the immune system's patrols just don't go as often. It gives them the space they need to establish that long-term infection. And then there's HIV, which is in a constant, microscopic arms race with our body. It mutates so fast, constantly changing its appearance, that it stays one step ahead of our immune system's memory. It's this relentless game of cat and mouse. But maybe the most direct tactic of all is to just sabotage the immune system itself. And that's exactly what HIV does. It directly infects and takes out our CD4 T cells, the very commanders that are supposed to be coordinating the entire immune defense. It's like taking out the generals in the middle of a battle. So let's meet the suspects. We can put these viruses into a sort of rogues gallery, and they fall into two main camps, based on what their genetic material is made of. You've got your DNA viruses and your RNA viruses. And here are the main culprits. On the DNA virus side, you've got HPV, famously linked to cervical and oral cancers, and Epstein-Barr virus, which is tied to certain lymphomas. Hepatitis B is another major one, causing liver cancer. And then on the RNA virus side, you have hepatitis C, which also goes after the liver, and HTLV-1, which can cause a really aggressive type of leukemia. Each one has its own unique way of attacking the body. Now, here's a really fascinating point. Let's look at adenoviruses for a second. These are the viruses that usually just give you a common cold. In the lab, scientists have shown that the way these viruses replicate is so powerful that it can actually transform animal cells and even cause tumors. It's a really potent mechanism. But, and this is a huge but, here's the twist. Even though they can do all that in a petri dish, There is zero evidence that adenoviruses actually cause cancer in humans. And this is such a critical reminder that our bodies are incredibly complex. What happens in the lab doesn't always translate to the real, messy, complicated world of human biology. So this all begs a pretty important question. How in the world do you fight an enemy that literally hides inside your own cells? It's a huge challenge. So let's look at the toolkit that science has developed for diagnosis and treatment. Diagnosing these stealthy viruses takes a really sophisticated approach. We can look for cell damage under a microscope, sure, but that has its limits. The real game changer has been molecular tools like PCR. This technique is so incredibly sensitive, it can find and make millions of copies of even tiny, tiny fragments of viral DNA. It tells us not just if a virus is there, but how much of it there is. And when we talk about success stories, the battle against hepatitis C is just incredible. For years, treatments were tough and didn't work that well. But the development of new, direct-acting antivirals has been an absolute revolution. We're talking cure rates of over 95%. This directly slashes the risk of liver cancer for millions of people. It's a monumental win for medicine. All right, now for one final twist. The impact of these viruses actually shows up in a place you might not expect at all, during a routine visit to your dentist. It turns out our mouths can be a window into our overall health. So if a dentist sees something like this, a fuzzy white patch on the side of the tongue, that's called oral hairy leukoplakia. It's caused by the Epstein-Barr virus. And here's the kicker. It almost only ever appears in people with a seriously compromised immune system, like patients with HIV. Seeing this can be one of the very first signs of a major systemic problem, which makes your dentist a critical frontline responder. In fact, the emergence of bloodborne viruses like HIV and hepatitis B back in the 80s and 90s totally revolutionized safety in all of healthcare. It's why we have the rigorous standard precautions we see today. The principle that you treat every patient as potentially infectious. It's a fundamental layer of safety that was built directly from our understanding of these very viruses. And this whole journey, from a single malfunctioning gene all the way to a dental checkup, it just shows you how deeply interconnected everything in our body is. The mouth isn't just for talking and eating. It really is a diagnostic canvas, sometimes revealing the earliest clues of diseases caused by these stealthy viral invaders. Which leaves us with a final powerful thought to chew on. Since we know these viruses can lie dormant for decades, quietly setting the stage for disease, what's next? How might future breakthroughs in diagnostics, maybe even genetic editing, let us find and neutralize these silent threats years or even decades before cancer ever gets a chance to show up? It points to a future where we might prevent cancer in ways we are only just beginning to imagine.